All right, so this is just a quick overview of Chapter 5, the information about the readings, really kind of focusing on qualitative and quantitative research, differences between the two. As we move through the rest of the semester, we're going to mainly focus on quantitative research, which involves collecting data that as numeral-based, number-based. So we've been collecting qualitative data for about the last 8 weeks. Qualitative data is narrative-based data. Everything that we've done we've been writing down, we've been taking notes, and we've been analyzing those notes. And so you've got observations, you've got journals, you've got existing documents, which we'll talk about and we'll look at in a couple of weeks. But it all involves reading information and trying to interpret that information and obtaining meaning from that written text, either through observations, interviews, or even some existing data sets. This is just a quick overview of some of the different qualitative data techniques. Some of that we've done, others we have not done. Observations, we've done several of those. We've done several interviews, and we coded that and we did the thematic network for the interview. There's data journals. Data journals would be a technique if we wanted to do sort of a long period of observation over a certain amount of time in sort of specific areas. So if we wanted to take a part of the classroom, we wanted to see how children were maybe using a literacy center or a home living center and what children were doing in those centers. We'd take notes, we'd journal about that every day for a couple of weeks, and then we'd go in and sort of analyze that and look at how those centers are being used. Or maybe we wanted to look at something at the beginning of the day and some behaviors we might be seeing or behaviors at the end of the day. It's just basically taking journals and notes, something similar to the observations we've done, but this is over a prolonged period of time to really try to make sense of some behavior or something we're trying to get a better understanding of. Existing documents, and this is data that you didn't necessarily intend to collect, but you're using it as a way of analyzing something. You might look at different class work, different assignments, different things that are around the room to try to get an idea for, anything you're interested in that might be relevant. So that's kind of been a tough one in the past, but students have kind of looked at daily schedules, some of the stuff that they might have up in the room in terms of like weather charts and those sorts of things to get an idea for maybe how children might be engaging with the classroom and interacting within the classroom. But we probably we should have assignment, depending on how much time we have, that we'll look at some document analysis, and you guys will do some of that in a couple weeks in the future. Just to briefly touch on validity and qualitative data analysis, as we are collecting data and interacting. So you're very involved in the data collection process when you're doing qualitative data analysis. You're observing in the classroom. You are interviewing a parent. You are present. And so does that presence change the nature of the data you're collecting? If I'm interviewing a parent, are they concerned about how I'm viewing them, or you might be viewing them? And so their answers might change or vary based on who's interviewing the parents. You may not be getting as accurate of an answer as you would maybe if you did sort of a survey where they were more anonymous and you didn't know, you weren't directly talking to that individual. So the book talks about these different types of validity: credibility, transferability, dependability, confirmability, and then but the idea is the data we're collecting, does it really represent what we think it's representing? Am I really getting at what I think I'm getting at? Or am I presenting or introducing some sort of bias into that process? Transferring now to quantitative data techniques, it's really anything that we can measure with a number, anything that we can assign a number value to would be considered a quantitative data techniques. Surveys, questionnaires, rating scales, if we can sort of assign a number value, it would be considered quantitative data. Then we can take that and we can kind of look at averages and variability. We can look at correlations. There's a lot you can do. You can graph it. You can see if there's been change over time. All with these different values that we assign to either behaviors or cognitive function or number of times we see something occurring. So different types of quantitative data techniques. The biggest one that we'll explore, and well, one of the bigger ones we'll explore would be a Likert scale, where you will essentially rate someone on a scale of strongly agree to strongly disagree. It's basically a range of scores that someone can indicate where they are, where they fall along that range. One of the problems with a Likert scale is that we don't always know what a 5 means versus what a 3 means. So one way of getting around that is to have an open-ended part of that where you ask a question and then you'll allow someone to sort of explain, which brings a little bit of qualitative a qualitative component to it. You don't often see a lot of open-ended Likert scales because it's a bit more time-consuming, and when you're doing this type of sort of research, you generally are trying to get as much data as you can, aggregate it, and then sort of look at it relative to a whole, a bunch of responses, understanding that there's a lot of variability and there's what we call noise in that data, meaning that someone might put a 5 when they really are a 3. And so this is some of the reliability and validity issues that you'll run into. Different ways of doing quantitative data analysis. Surveys would be through some of the stuff they got up here. SurveyMonkey, I've used that one. Some of the other ones I pull everywhere. Oftentimes we'll do that if we're in a talk. Western has a pull everywhere, and we'll want to know what the audience is think on a certain things, and so we'll do the poll everywhere, and you'll kind of get where the different audience members line up, or if there's questions or level of understanding, or someone will rate that, which is kind of cool. So similar to qualitative data, quantitative data also has validity, must also be valid. It's less a matter of, am I introducing bias by my presence in the process of collecting data, and more a matter of, is my instrument actually getting at what I think it's getting at? So the idea of content validity is so let's say I'm looking at a child's ability to focus and pay attention, and I'm giving them scores based on how they perform. Well, there's lots of different types of memory. There's working memory, there's long-term memory, there's short-term memory, there's episodic memory, which is my memory for events in my past. And so maybe I'm measuring memory, but I'm measuring working memory, but I think I'm also measuring short-term memory. So content validity is my measurement actually getting at the content that I think it's getting at? Am I really getting at working memory, or am I also getting at short-term memory or long-term memory? And so it's being able to sort of say that my measure is getting at this, and it's not getting at this, or it might be getting at this, and this, and so I'm getting at these different aspects of memory. Concurrent validity is the validity of a measure relative to other measures. And so I have a measure of working memory, working memory is the ability to take in information, hold that information in memory, and then offer that back. And so it's really involved in mathematical processing and those sorts of things, any type of holding information and solving problems and whatnot. So it's really important for early childhood. It's really developing. And so I have a measure that I'm developing, and there are other valid measures out there, or other measures that have been validated. Where does my measure represent? How well does my measure correlate or connect or is linked to those other measures? That's concurrent validity. Predictive validity, does my measure predict anything? Is it predicting the same thing? So if my measure in working memory generally predicts strong math ability, and so is my measure, as I'm doing sort of a test, as I'm testing children, does it also predict, or is it also predictive of the same things that other measures of working memory are predicted of? And then construct validity is similar to content validity, but it's more all-inclusive. And so is my working memory measure really capturing all there is that's involved in working memory? So different facets of working memory. It doesn't really work, but let's say you want to talk about measure of literacy development. Am I getting at all aspects of what's involved in literacy, reading, vocabulary, phonetics, and whatnot, all the different processes or math. So it's more of a construct. Is it getting at the construct that I'm actually looking at? Very much related to content, but specific to Is it capturing all that there is involved in whatever measure we're looking at? I don't know if that was clear. So reliability as distinct from validity. Validity is my measure really getting at what I think it's measuring? Reliability is, does my measure consistently measure this construct that I have over time? Is it reliable to measure it today? As in reliable, do I actually get the same results when I test somebody the next day or a week later? Is my measure reliable over time? Basically, one of the ways you can test this is to sort of give someone an assessment. So if I'm giving them a working memory assessment on Monday and then I retest them on the next Monday, is their scores correlated, or are they not correlated? So you'd want them to be correlated. You want them to perform the same on that Monday as they would on the following Monday. So that's retest reliability. So I give you an assessment of working memory today, and I test you again tomorrow, and then I test you again on Saturday or Sunday. Are those scores correlated? Are you the same on each time? Equivalent forms is to have sort of two different versions of an assessment, and to give someone one working memory test one day and then another working memory test another day. Now, there are different questions that you're asking for that. And do they line up? Are they correlated with each other? The Cooter-Richard index, or the KR21, is sort of another formula that's developed to sort of correlate scores. But these are different ways of assessing if what the tool we're using is both valid, actually getting at what we think it's getting at, and reliable, meaning I can measure it. It measures the same thing over time. It's measuring working memory today, and it's also measuring working memory tomorrow, and you're performing similar over time.